sorry about that, everybody. I am coming in from a Victorian house. It's in the middle of London, quite near to Buckingham Palace. And I know most of my listeners will be American. So I thought I'd add that we're quite near to Buckingham Palace, quite near to Harrods. And I've just been along and had a cup of tea there, walked back, and it is raining. There's a really grey sky over London today. So I hope you can hear me. I'm going to try and keep you entertained. And I'm focusing on a part of America where I used to live, which was Los Angeles. And I lived in Westwood Village for 3 years. And it was an amazing time. I really love Americans, and I relate to them. And had I had my own way, I'd still be living in America now. But sadly, I didn't have a visa, couldn't get work as a journalist out there. So I had to return to live in London. So here I am stuck somewhere, and the sun's probably shining in Los Angeles, and I'm stuck here in the middle of London, and the traffic is busy and it's rather grey and rainy. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm going to be doing a regular show on Mondays and Fridays for 2 hours. I'm an ex-Fleet Street journalist. I started work at the Sunday Mirror, and I was there for 2 years working for the Sunday Mirror as a reporter, and then I moved to work for the News of the World. And I know that's very unpopular with most people. It was a nasty newspaper. Someone said to me, the smell of death coming from the news desk. And the news desk editor, Greg Miskew, started to date, and we became lovers for the whole time I was there. So he actually leaned on me. So I got to know what it was like to be an editor of the News of the World. And another ex-boyfriend of mine was the overall editor, a man called Philip Hall. And it was a fascinating place, and they did destroy lives. They did target people. We would have meetings where Greg used to say, right, let's get Beckham, or let's get Hugh Grant. And then we would all be told to just go and get them. And that meant ringing around all our showbiz contacts, any contacts, police contacts, trying to get dirt on the particular person that had been targeted. So it was almost like working for a terrorist organization, in that we would target people and then go in and assault these people for no apparent reason other than the editor had decided to target them. And I'm pretty sure that the orders came from above, not from middle management. I remember one time when I went there late to meet up with Greg to go to the Old Rose afterwards. And I thought I would have a pry around my ex-boyfriend's office. He was the overall editor. He was eventually replaced by Andy Coulson. And I looked through his diary, I looked through his desk, and in his diary, he said, meeting with Tony Blair, breakfast with Tony Blair. So it's, they were, I found out pretty soon that they were very plugged in to the top, and anything we did wrong, we were always, we could always wriggle out of it. I remember on a job one time we had found out that Neil Gallagher had a love child, and all we knew was the second name. And of course, the editor wanted to know his first name. So I was sent along to find out what his first name was, and it was a little private school in Kensington. So I drove there, my little Lotus sports car, my little silver sports car, and sat outside. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do this. That mother wants to remain private and not in the news, and this is a little child, and I don't want to do this. So I spoke to Greg, and I said, I've tried, and actually I can't come up with anything. And he said, no, don't worry, we're going to call in the SAS. Now, I had worked at the News of the World with the SAS. There was a group of men run by a Welshman called Rab, And we did a lot of undercover work together because that was my background, which I'll talk about in a moment. And I used to go to Bisley shooting range and do rifle shooting with Rab and the boys. And they had their own clubhouse there, which actually was an SAS clubhouse. And of course, serving men used to come along. And Greg Miskiw got wind of this and he said, Rab charges so much, he's so expensive. I really want to use the serving boys. So my mission was to speak to the boys that were serving and invite them to the News of the World parties. Now, the News of the World parties were massively glamorous effects, massively glamorous. We would have it decked out in Alice in Wonderland and hire different places like the Oxo building and just deck them out, in different themes. And there was so much money thrown at these events, and they were always full of the most high ranking police officers and officials, MPs, MP secretaries. And these serving SAS men were invited along to these parties. And of course, Greg Miskiw then charmed them, took their phone numbers, and we took them on our books. And of course, then you have the SAS spying on celebrities, and of course they're the best. They're magnificent in what they do. They can hide in a ditch opposite a celebrity's house or opposite a politician's house. So here we had the military that was under the command of News Corps, and this went on for many years. And I'll stop there and go into my background and then reconnect with that story. My background was I grew up in a Catholic orphanage. I was dumped by my schoolgirl mother, who gave me to an orphanage, left me with them. They were a Catholic orphanage. Eventually they caught up with her. This is what the story goes, but I haven't been allowed to see my file. But basically I was brought up by an organization called the Crusade of Rescue, which was quite a sinister organization. I lived in the orphanage until I was adopted at age 5, and I was placed with a family that were ex-military and also had a sister called Sister Kathleen Hart of the Daughters of St. Paul, who was very in tight with the Vatican. She would go back and fro to Rome constantly. And she more or less became a strong figure, like a second mother. My adoptive mother wasn't very interested in me. My father wasn't very interested in me, but his sister was. So I would stay at the convent, and it was kind of expected that I would become one of the sisters. And I did enjoy reading the Bible. I did enjoy praying, which went on for hour after hour. I didn't enjoy the fact I was told that I was evil because I was made of sin and I was a bastard and illegitimate, and therefore I had this evil inside me that others didn't. And it actually put me on a pathway to try and comprehend what evil was, which led me to meet the two serial killers, Ian Brady, the Moors murderer, and Kenneth Bianchi, the Hillside Strangler, which I will do shows about in the coming weeks. But going back to my life, I stayed with these adoptive parents, and it was very oppressive, this heavily religious background. And I went to a very good school, but I got in with a bad crowd, and then I rebelled and basically ran away from home. I came back and they threw me into care. So then I stayed in care then until I was 18. Whilst I was in care, I did enjoy care, though it sounds quite sad. I actually enjoyed it because there was a lot of freedom there. And I was with a lot of children that had come out of Borstal and who were unwanted. And that was... It was very freeing. I was no longer in this really heavy atmosphere of the church. I was free of the church, and I developed a little bit of my own personality, which was quite rebellious. And while I was there, I met somebody who was involved in the military, who was a volunteer at the home. And at that time, I'd left school, and his father was starting a private detective agency. And I was asked, did I want to go along and join? There was some envy from my boyfriend at the time, someone called Trevor Wakely, who said, "Oh my God, you at a detective agency, that's rather like asking Ronnie Biggs to join the cops," because we had gone out shoplifting together for cigarettes and cider and that kind of childish nonsense. But I went ahead and I joined this detective agency where basically we were put in a basement. There was other young people and taught to lie. We were taught to obtain bank details. We were taught to obtain ex-directory phone numbers. We were taught basics in hacking. We were taught everything that investigations companies do. And this was run by an ex-military man. He had also worked for MI6, although he wasn't senior in MI6. I then dotted around from agency to agency, and I learnt even more about the business. Basically, the business is mostly either ex-police officers, ex-CID, which I've worked for, or ex-MI6. I have never come across anybody in MI5 who has started one of these agencies. But interestingly, and perhaps sinisterly, we have MI6 who use these agencies as a cover for black bag stuff from the government, which means they still are in MI6. They're just dealing with deniable operations known as black bag operations. And these companies are, and I'm going to name them and out them, Hacklight, CIEX Limited and KCS Limited. They're all run by MI6. Some of them, like CIEX Limited and KCS Limited, have MI6 officers at the top. I have worked for all of them, and some more than others. And the work that they do is just, it is such a cut and above your usual detective agency. It's literally work from other governments. It's dirt grade spying mostly. And because I was an attractive blonde with a babyish face, and young, I was used as a honey trap, which means I basically was told to cozy up to various incredibly powerful, incredibly dangerous personalities and basically honey trap them into my confidence. And so I would literally spy on them under covers. And that was my role from being in care. And although it sounds, and I've written a book about it called In for the Kill, which was published by Random House. And various people say, "Oh, wow, what a life. That's a little bit like Nikita." Well, okay, it's like Nikita, but it happened, and it's not as glamorous. It's not as glamorous as it sounds, because when you go undercover, it's not James Bond, and most of the time you're not dressed in finery. A lot of the time you're going to men that would take you down an alleyway and kill you in the blink of an eye. So most of the time you spend your time being absolutely terrified. And I developed panic attacks while I was doing the work, and I still to this day, I can't go in lifts, and I do suffer from panic attacks because the work I was doing was very, very dangerous. You just could have been beaten up at any moment. You could have been found out at any moment. And a lot of the time, these men did say to me, "I think you're spying on me. I don't think you're who you say you are. You're too good to be true. What's this young blonde interested in me all of a sudden?" And a lot of the time they got really nasty with me. So it's a terrifying position, and the positions are out there. If young girls want to apply, or young boys want to apply to these companies, they do look at their background, they do look at their pictures, and they will take them on. You can get a job spying if you are working class, whereas if you apply to MI5 or MI6, your whole family is looked at. You have to be of a certain class, and most of us don't stand a hope in hell's chance of ever being taken on by MI6. So this is a way that you can work for MI6, to work for these agencies. But it isn't highly paid, or it wasn't highly paid when I was doing it. I could barely make ends meet. And I went from bedsit to bedsit to bedsit, working for these agencies. Eventually, I got tired of doing very dangerous work. I was being underpaid, but I was too much of a silly blonde to work that out, and to demand more money. Instead of that, I thought, I don't want to work for these people anymore. So I went on a little bit of a disappearing act. Then I resurfaced and I got my own headed notepaper, and I wrote to various newspapers asking if I could work for them. I did have involvement with newspapers before that, because in my studying evil to try and find out what evil was, to exonerate myself, I had written to a serial killer called Ian Brady, the Moors murderer, and he had replied to me and said, come and see me. So I had gone mincing along, this little 22-year-old blonde, to meet this vile serial killer. And of course, the press had found out, and they came along to meet me. And that was where I first met my boyfriend, Philip Hall. He wrote about me, and we became lovers in the south of France, where he took me to write about me. And basically, he didn't write very good stuff. He wrote that I was an orphan. I might have been related to Brady. He might have been my real father. And basically, it was lies. He didn't pay me for it. And it had quite a bad effect on my life. And it was interesting that I went off and then reappeared at his newspaper. And then I started working for Greg Miskiw at the News of the World, doing investigations. Now, he tried me very sparingly to start with, and then he started using me more and more. And then eventually, when we started our relationship, he lent on me for the whole newspaper. He would come round at 8 o'clock in the morning round my flat, which was down Queen Elizabeth Street, the Circle, and basically tell me all about the problems and the stories that he needed to find out, what was going on, how to get behind the story, how to stand up the story. And he would say to me, what do I do? What do I do? And of course, with my background of all these many different agencies, I knew what to do. So I would tell him what to do. And this, folks, would not be illegally. I had learnt by that time that doing illegal work, even though I knew how to do it, was incredibly dangerous. I had worked for a company, Nationwide Investigations, who constantly were raided by the police, who constantly had petrol bombs at their front door, a man called Stuart Withers, who's now out of that business. And I knew not to risk, and I certainly knew not to risk with someone like a newspaper who would print the results of whatever an investigator dug up for them, would print their results, which would make it more likely that the police would bust down your door. So I would work out ways, and having my experience as a spy, especially as an undercover spy, cozying up to people, I was very astute in getting information out of people's heads. In fact, what's known as HUMINT was my forte. And so I would advise Miskiw how to do these investigations by getting inside people's heads, and how to set up scams and operations to get celebrities and politicians to cough what they were doing, to observe them. And I became very valuable to the newspaper. Clive Goodman at one time said I was the most important person on the newspaper. And that is no word of a lie. I swear on my 11-year-old son's life, that is not a lie. And what I'm telling you isn't a lie. Going back now to outside the school, I was working 24/7 for the News of the World. I was also working for the Sunday Mirror. I had started working for the Sunday Mirror before Greg Miskiw. And then I also moved to working for Ian Cobain and Peter Allen at the Daily Mail. And I was doing things like finding Mary Bell, tracking down the man who died of cancer for the BBC, and doing many front pages, of which I have the proof of payment from the Daily Mail, and also the Sunday Mirror on the News of the World if anybody wishes to see this. Anyway, back to outside the school. I was working very hard, working a lot of the time with Mazza Mahmood, the fake sheikh, pretending to be his wife. We met Sylvester Stallone that way, which also is going to be the subject for another show. But back to Noel Gallagher, and outside that school in Kensington, Greg said to me, we're going to send in the SAS. So I thought, what does he mean, the SAS? And I was a little bit sick of the time of Greg Miskiw, even though we were dating, and he was a gorgeous looking man, just completely beautiful, a little bit in the direction of Al Pacino, and incredibly good looking. I did look up to him, but what I didn't like was the way he was enamored by stars and celebrities. And he would talk in quite a childish way sometimes. And to say, we're sending in the SAS, I thought, oh my God, what is that man on about? So I got out of my car and I walked over outside the school, and all of a sudden I saw this big burly man coming up the road, looking at me with great intent. And he got up close to me and he said, are you hot? And I was like, yes. And he said, follow me. And he walked in the school, walked into the headmistress's office, started pulling every tiny paper off the wall. And as he walked then straight out, pushed me out of the way. I was gobsmacked, walked down the corridor, pulling every piece of paper off the wall. And then he got outside. Loads of people came out looking what's going on. I was one of them. I thought, this surely is illegal. And he walked off down the road, stuffing the papers. Nobody was going to touch this man. He was incredibly slick. Just to see him working was like watching poetry in motion. I got back in the car, spoke to Greg and said, oh, is that the SAS? And he basically hung up on me. And then the story appeared in the newspaper. So that was the only time that I witnessed one of the serving SAS officers. Most of the time I worked with RABS men, and RABS men obviously would not do anything illegal. They were a professional outfit. They worked for lawyers, so they wouldn't have done anything like that. But these serving officers, you know, they basically, you know, when you're in the SAS, you can do anything you like. Moving on to the phone hacking, I know mentioning phone hacking to American people, they probably are going to fall asleep over their croissant and coffee, if they do have croissant and coffee still over there and they haven't all gone very British and are sipping tea. They're probably thinking, oh, that's so boring and it's all gone. It's not gone, actually. It's very linked with the death and the murder of Princess Diana. We're going back to the SAS again, and an outfit called the Increment. Now, the Increment are basically the military wing of MI6. And they're a very interesting group. Basically, they're a little bit like the Feathermen. I don't know if anybody has seen the film with Clive Owen, the Feathermen. I think it's called the Feathermen, but it might be called something else. But it is about the Feathermen. This group, Increment, nobody's written about them. They're not known. You have to be involved in the SAS to know about them. And basically, they are assassins, and that is all they do constantly. They are an incredibly elite outfit, the cream of the SAS officers, and that is what they do. I mean, there should be a film made about them. They are utterly fascinating, and they are a posse of serial killers. And all they do is murder. They murdered Diana and they murdered Sean Hoare, who was killed during the phone hacking. And let me explain why the phone hacking is linked with Diana. back again, and I'm cool. I'm basically sitting here in a Victorian house in the middle of London, and beaming out to everyone. Hopefully, everyone, not everyone, but hopefully more than one person out in America. And I am so profoundly envious of everyone who's out in America. You have better food. People are friendlier, the weather, the sun is shining. And here in boring London, we've got really grey skies. There's a cold rain coming down, and it's pretty miserable, actually, even though where I am, it's quite a beautiful part of London. We've got Harrods, which is not too far. I can walk there. They've got a nice selection of teas. And nice pate, and of course up the road, Diana's, God rest her soul, Diana's favourite shop, Harvey Nichols, which is one of my favourites. It's glossier, even more beautiful. Any of you that are coming to visit London, please make it one of your first stops, and make your second stop the Clevedon, which is my favourite hotel. Michael Jackson stayed there. Please Google it. It's just absolutely stunning, and where the John Perfumer Christine Keeler scandal went on. So you've got the very sexy swimming pool, and the very sexy swimming pool, and the a gorgeous jacuzzi outside under lemon groves, where you can make love and then get caught by the butler, which is what happened to me. It was quite embarrassing, actually. He came along. I was in the spa with my boyfriend, and he came along with a towel and said, "Excuse me, my lady, here, cover yourself, please." And he looked the other way with his nose in the air, and the towel was hung on the tip of his finger in disgust. So I had to climb out naked, with everybody watching, and wrap myself in the towel. So that's Clevedon. But, it's a fascinating place, and it is just an experience. I stayed there the first time undercover for the News of the World. We were doing an operation on Kilroy Silk. He was having an affair behind his wife's back, and we followed him there. I was basically undercover. I was sent along and to spy on him, and I was really enjoying it. Really enjoying staying there. It was just a fantastic experience. The food is amazing, and interestingly, the place is haunted. Now, I asked the management for a haunted room because I'm a little bit psychic. I like to think I'm a little bit psychic, and I thought, well, I don't believe they've got a little ghost. So I asked for the Mountbatten suite, and in the middle of the night, my boyfriend, who I sneaked in, woke up and went, "Oh my God, I can feel something really malevolent." And I woke up and I could feel it. And literally, it was a really awful feeling. And he said, it's like it's saying it's got us. And that was the feeling. It was almost like something had kind of arrived in the room. And it was a horrible experience. I wanted to leave in the middle of the night, actually, but we couldn't. I did go out and go into this kind of weird living room they've got with silver armor and tapestries, and this massive fireplace which towers over your head, and there was nobody there. So it's a really incredibly spooky place. So don't go there unless you want to be spooked out. But, if you're American, you're coming to London, that's a really big slice of England that you can go and see. It's not cheap. I think it starts at £600 a night. And for the real experience of staying in the actual house itself, I think it goes up to about 6,000. Last time I stayed in the Lady Astor suite, and that is obviously I didn't pay for it myself. Again, it was undercover with a newspaper, but that was Lady Astor's bedroom, and again, it just holds the past. So there are nice things about London, but all in all, I just really want to be out in America, because it's just a place where I think the minds of the people are that much more expansive than we get here sometimes, although not everybody, obviously. Sometimes our minds can be a bit closed. I live in a village. It's just 20 minutes from Kensington, but it's called a village, even though it's on the outskirts of London. And basically, it's a little bit like Stepford Wives. The women are professional wives, and they have their hair curled up at the edges, a bit like Brie Vanderkamp. And they're very cliquey. I'm a single mother, and they do shun me to a certain extent, little bit like in an Amish community. They do have that going on, that if you are divorced or single, they automatically assume that you're out every night with about 10 different men, then the next night another 10, and they do treat you in that way. They are horrible. I've got the queen of them living across the road to me. She lives in about a £6 million house with extension upon extension. She's called Janie, and I try not to talk about her a lot, but I find myself bitching about Janie quite a lot, actually. My son is 11, and he's rather caught on to it. So whenever we mention Stepford Wives or these professional housewives, we talk about Janie. If only she knew how much I talk about her. If only she knew I'm now on the radio talking about her. But she is a Brie Vanderkamp, but a boring version, because at least Brie was fascinating. A boring version, they bake and they dress in Bowden and they have little exclusive parties and leave people out and they judge. And this is what my village is made up of. It's a scary little place, very well heeled, and I would do anything to move out of it. So if there's any single men out there in America who need a mail order wife, I'm on Facebook under Christine Joanna Hart. So please come in your droves and rescue me. Back now to murder by the state. Going back to the News of the World, I was working really too hard for the News of the World. At night times, I was going out with Mazza Mahmood as his wife, as his fake wife. And Mazza is I was on the news recently, which you can find on YouTube, on the news, talking about what it was like to work with Mazza. He was basically caught out trying to frame somebody with cocaine, a pop star called Talisa. She took him to court and she won. So now Mazza is being investigated. But back then I worked with him quite a lot, and he was quite an enigmatic character. And I found it quite stressful to work with him. He was very mysterious and interesting. The methods he used sometimes were a little bit naughty. I wanted to keep my distance from him to a certain respect. But I found myself working with him at night times and then getting back to my flat, which was about 10 minutes walk from the News of the World. And then I would have plenty of work to do when I got home. And the work I was getting from the Sunday Mirror was basically what you call blagging, what the English call blagging, which is basically using subterfuge to find out whether someone was having an affair with another person, not to be confused with Steve Whittemore type blagging to get information off computers, which is completely different, bog standard work, and I would not touch it with a barge pole, especially not for a newspaper, even though I am fully aware of how to do it. However, Greg Mishew kept giving me phone numbers and asking me who was on the end of it. I saw this as beneath me and I didn't want to do it, but he would give me a list of 5 or 6 numbers and say who's on the end of that. So I didn't want to break the law for a newspaper. That would be a pretty stupid thing to do. I'd been around long enough to know that that was a no-no. So I would merely ring the numbers and say, who are you? and find out, some of them who they were, others not so. I didn't like doing this. I thought, well, this is risky because it's the news of the world. Who am I ringing? And basically, they're going to see themselves in the newspaper and get very irate about that and maybe trace a call to me. So I said to Greg, I don't want to do this. He kept giving them to me. And then one afternoon, my very yuppie apartment in the Circle, which is in a very, it's quite Americanized. It's an apartment block, and it's split in half with a brass horse in the center, and it has glossy purple brickwork outside. It's just lined in purple bricks and just totally gorgeous, and it's ported. And I had a penthouse apartment there, and I was earning about $100,000 a year, maybe more, doing what I was doing for these three newspapers, the Daily Mail, the News of the World, and the Sunday Mirror. Basically creative work, or what's known as HUMINT in the army. And Greg Miskew, one afternoon, I had been down, there was a swimming pool underneath the building, and I had swam, quite a few lengths, and then I had a personal trainer lift weights. So I had lifted loads of weights, and I went back upstairs to the flat in my dressing gown, because you could walk across reception wearing a toweling dressing gown. So I did this, came swanning back up, and I think I had a salad or something because there was a restaurant there. Swan back up, and Greg Miskew was on the other end of the phone, and he started shouting at me, and it was about the Yorkshire Ripper. His wife was having her hair done, and she was getting married again, and basically the News of the World wanted pictures of the wedding. And she was in a hairdresser's, and he basically wanted to find out what she was having done, what colouring she was having done, what cut, and where she was off to next, and basically where the wedding was. And the whole of the newsroom was out on this job. And he screamed down the phone at me, "You do it. I want you to do it. I want you to find out where she is. I want you to find out what colour her hair is now, so we can follow her. For God's sake, for God's sake, for God's sake." And with this, I'd just been working out. So I started to go, and basically I blacked out. I hit the deck, and my head banged on the side of the desk. And I was on the floor, and basically I put down the phone, picked up and dialed a number straight to the porter. I said, "I'm dying," to the porter. That's all I said, "I'm dying." Anyway, he was bright enough that he called an ambulance. And next thing I woke up, I was on a stretcher. And I ended up in the hospital in, I think it's called Tooting Hospital. And my heart was strapped up with various things to it. And I was laid out on the bed. And yeah, I felt pretty rotten. I thought I'd had a heart attack. I was pretty sure I'd had a heart attack. And I just felt completely weak, completely terrified. And I thought, I'm not going to work for the News of the World again. This is mad. You know, I already had panic attacks from my job with the ex-MI6, what's known as MI6's commercial arm, where they can hire working class orphans like me. And I had panic attacks, and this is something more. This was horrible. And I thought, I'm not going to work for the News of the World anymore. I can't handle it. And I wanted to be a writer, and I had enough money saved that I thought, well, I can live for a couple of months and then work in a shop or something. Just not this. I'm not going to end up. So there I was, pale in the bed, covered with the screens. And next thing, I saw a face appear from behind the curtains. If anybody can guess whose that face was, that was the face of the devil himself. It was Greg Miskew, who had come from the News of the World news desk to the hospital. And he had given me this, what I thought was a heart attack. And there he was, peeking through. "Are you all right?" he said with a grin on his face. "What about the Yorkshire Ripper?" And literally, I just laid there. And it sounds funny, but I just started crying. And I just thought, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. But he didn't. I don't know where I got the strength from, because well, turned out that I had had a panic attack. It was a panic attack. So Greg stood there laughing that it was a panic attack and I thought it was a heart attack. And then he insisted on staying, even though it was the middle of the afternoon. It was a Friday afternoon, a very busy one for the newspaper. I just wanted him to go. But he was there. He took me around the corner to the pub for a drink. I had a brandy. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this. You know, it nearly killed me. And he laughed and said, it was a panic attack, you silly tart. But, you know, I didn't really see the funny side. I said, I can't work for you anymore. I don't want to do it. And I want to be a writer anyway. Why am I doing this shit? And, you know, it was shit. It wasn't curing cancer. It wasn't helping anyone. It was hurting people, even though I went out of my way when they were doing investigations that did hurt people to tip them off. They were under investigation because I had my name splurted all over the front pages that I was related to a serial killer. So I didn't want to do the same to other people. So I was determined that I wouldn't do the same to other people. So I had tipped them off and I had not hurt people, but I had to watch other people hurt people. And basically there was suicides constantly. I think there was a monk that threw himself off Beachy Head as well. There was so many deaths that it was disgusting. And spiritually, I didn't feel very happy. I would go and talk to a priest and talk it over about what I was doing. And he said, you need to give it up. So basically everything was screaming at me that I needed to give it up. And I said to Greg, I can't do it. And he said, well, I need you. You can't leave me. And because I was in love with him at that time, I thought, I can't leave him. So I said, well, look, I know a man, and I'm not going to mention the name of this man because I have been threatened about it. I've had basically some quite weird ways of threatening me, but some have been absolutely terrifying and involve remote viewing and synthetic telepathy. And they've all been around this. And I had the same thing last night. I'm not going to say this man's name, okay? But you can find out his name pretty easily. But I'm not going to say his name. I'm going to call him Mr. Green, okay? When I was 19, I worked for Mr. Green. He was a public school boy. He is very linked with MI6, also with the SAS. Now, I worked for him, and basically, he looked like Dirk Bogarde. He was stunningly beautiful, and we had we didn't have a love affair. Basically, it was just lust, really, more on my part. I was a lot younger than him. I was a young blonde, so obviously he was attracted to me. And we had a thing, and I kept in contact with him. And we used to, you know, I would ring him, we would meet up, have dinner, basically end up in bed, and then not see each other for a long time. And then that would go on, and it had gone on for about 10 years. And I said to Greg, as I sat in the pub, I said, look, I know someone called Mr. Green who can do phone work, and basically he can do this phone stuff that you seem to need. When I knew him, he wasn't doing phone hacking. He was doing a lot of stuff that he shouldn't have, but nothing, no phone hacking, no computer hacking, which clearly he got into later. He was a very rich man. He is a very rich man. He's friends with a certain celebrity, a certain incredibly famous English celebrity, and he lives in an £8 million estate, a little bit like Tom Ripley off Ripley's Game. He is educated, beautiful, cultivated, moves in high society, and the brainchild behind photo hacking, yet he hasn't been profiled by any of the media. Why is that? Because he leads back to the state. Anyway, I think we're going to go to break in a minute. So I'm going to continue with that after, to talk about Mr. Green. He's very interesting. I actually met with Stephen Heffer, who is a top London lawyer who is investigating Sunday Mirror on phone hacking. The Sunday Mirror and Piers Morgan are linked with phone hacking because Mr. Green is friends with Piers Morgan, and Mr. Green worked for the Sunday Mirror. Why did he work for the Sunday Mirror? Because he hacked me after I introduced him to the News of the World to find out who else I was working for, who else could he steal from me. So basically, my lover stole. I gave him the news of the world because of my panic attack, but he then hacked me to find out who else I was working for, and that was the Sunday Mirror. The Daily Mail, I know, rejected him, said, no, thank you, we're too proper. But the Sunday Mirror took him up, and so did the Daily Mirror. So that is the link to them. They're currently being sued by celebrities. So I met with Stephen Heffer last week. I think we go to break. Hi, I'm welcoming you back again. This is Christine Joanna Hart, and I'm broadcasting here from London. And the weather is pretty grim. It's a light rain. The skies are really grey, and I'm indoors. I've got my back on my red pajamas with little white rabbits, and I'm being very Bridget Jones Diary here with my Winsiette pajamas and under the duvet because it's so awful out there, and I don't want to go back out. I went out for a little jog and came back and cowered under the duvet rather than putting the heating on. So while all you guys are getting up ready to prepare the day, I am hiding from the day under my cowboy Arizona Cath Kidston duvet cover with my red Winsiette pajamas on. I am not going to go out now for a good few hours because it's so grim. And probably in America, it is probably the sun is shining and everyone's happy and you're enjoying the good coffee that you get out there. You've got those lovely little hazelnut mixers. You've got the Irish cream mixers. We don't have any of that here. We just have boring Nescafe. So have pity on this really tiny little island that's uptight. We are mostly made up of Stepford wives, businessmen that are completely dead inside. They trot about with their bowler hats on, pinstripe suits, and they're dead inside. So that's the island I'm stuck on. So if there's any single men out there looking for a mail order wife, just attach me on Facebook and rescue me from my tower, my Rapunzel tower in the middle of London. It's really, really grim. I'd like to be living a real life and out there, but I'm not going to go out there because as soon as I go out the door, you have the Stepford wives, and the Stepford wives are walking up and down the street wearing their boden with their parasols and their bloody curled up hair at the side. And they make the movie with Nicole Kidman, Stepford Wives, look like a joke because they are the real deal. And I'm single. I'm a single mother. I'm shunned, especially by my neighbour Janie. And I've often bitched about Janie to my son and other friends. I don't have many friends, but other, acquaintances that I have. And she lives on the corner, slightly opposite, but more or less on the corner. And she lives in a huge house. It's worth a hell of a lot of millions, and it's extension upon extension. And she is the perfect head of the Stepford wives. And they all congregate round her house and hail Janie. And since I've been living here now for 6 years, I often bitch about her. And I'm pleased to say I'm now bitching on the radio about her. It's fantastic. At least makes me feel a little bit empowered. When I go past her house in my beaten up car and pull over to get in my shabby house opposite, and I can feel pretty bad. But obviously I'm getting a little bit of power back because I can talk about her on the radio. I can spy through my binoculars over to her back garden and report it all back to you guys. She is the Glenn Close figure in Stepford Wives, the real mean one. She's married to a pilot. So that's my little London village, and it's called a village. So everyone thinks it's really quaint, but it's not. It's horrible. It's a horrible place. Outwardly, it's very, very beautiful, a little bit like Desperate Housewives, Wisteria Lane. But to live here, it is a horror. Really, it's gosh, that's a horror. Anyway, back to we were talking about the news of the world, and we were talking about murder by the state. Basically, at this point, I introduced Mr. Green into the news of the world. So into the news of the world came phone hacking and computer hacking. In it came. I've left out a part of the story. When Nick Davies came on board, I'm sure, a lot of English people and American people will soon get to know who Nick Davies is, because George Clooney is making a movie about Nick Davies's life. And Nick Davies will be portrayed as Dustin Hoffman from All the President's Men. But he's not exactly like that, because the phone hacking imploded. The news of the world imploded on itself, but it was let go ahead. Basically, Rupert Murdoch is an Illuminati whipping boy, so he takes the flak for everything. The news of the world was meant to crash. Basically, new laws were brought in by Lord Leveson, and the celebrities and the politicians all went along with it. So basically now the press doesn't have any teeth. The press no longer does investigations. So that leaves the elite to get on with abusing rent boys and all manner of stealing from the public purse. And that goes unchallenged. So it wasn't just the News of the World, a sleazy newspaper, that took a dive. It was investigative journalism on Fleet Street. The whole thing went out the window. And I thought when Nick Davies was sniffing around on the phone hacking that he would expose this, but it turns out that he's also a part of it, as the movie will be a part of it. He is part of the cover-up. And I was very sad, because he was my hero for a long time, and his assistant came sniffing around me to want to know about Mr. Green, and also he wanted to find out what had gone on at the News of the World, and he wanted me to spy on my former colleagues, such as Ian Edmondson, who was a good friend of mine, and Neville Furback, who was a good friend of mine, and other journalists. So he wanted me basically to ring them and say, God, isn't this really bad? What's happening? God, what was your part in it? Not quite as blatant, but he basically paid me to do that. He hired me basically as his investigator. So I met with him quite a lot, and he came to my home. I thought he was a friend. I would have called him a friend. The only thing that I wasn't honest with Nick Davies was about Mr. Green. His first question to me when we meet was, I know that Mr. Green brought in phone hacking and computer hacking, and he said, when did you meet him, etc., etc. I said, I don't know Mr. Green. I've never heard of that name. And that was a lie, because I assumed that he was onto him. I assumed that he was going to rip him apart. I assumed that he was going to expose that he was actually incredibly linked to MI6, and that MI6 had started the phone hacking to remove the teeth from the press, so it became a dead dog, and that was what had gone on. But Nick Davies did not reveal that in his book. In fact, it's covered up. There is no mention of Mr. Green. I think his name was thrown in once, and also there was no mention of me, even though I was the investigator, worked with Mazza Mahmood. I am merely listed in the back amongst the other investigators. Nothing about that I brought in phone hacking via Mr. Green, and that I was a star witness with Operation Wheating. I was given my own cop, DS Michael White of Operation Wheating, who came to see me every week to make sure that I was still alive and not murdered. Operation Wheating also told me they believe Sean Hall was murdered, and I had to be very careful, because now I was a witness and my life was under threat. When I was supposed to give testimony on my ex-lover, Greg Miskiw, but when Miskiw pleaded guilty, I was dropped as a witness. And that was quite curious, because I had a lot of backstory to tell. I also had the MI6 angle, but that was covered up. And it was also covered up in Nick Davies's book. I was mentioned once inside the book, and I was given a code name. The code name is York. And basically, I'm on 2 pages, and it doesn't say much at all. I was very upset that I was left out of Nick Davies's party, because I thought we were friends, his launch party. And I posted something on Facebook. Oh, not really the good guy, are you, Nick Davies? Thanks very much for leaving me out of the book and out of the party, even though I helped you so very much. And he rang me straight away from his home and said, oh, I'm really sorry. You didn't want to be in, but you wanted to be hidden. And I said that I had written a book about the whole thing. And I couldn't find a publisher because of legals. And James Murray from the Sunday Express had met with me on very many occasions at a pub in Holborn to help me with the book. He said, I'm going to do a big story on you, calling it The Phone Hacking Deep Throat. And he wrote that story and he helped me with the book. But I couldn't find a publisher. And he said, well, that doesn't matter. Just hang it on Amazon, self-published. It's an amazing story. It now hangs under the title, How Nick Davies Hired Me to Spy on My Colleagues at the News of the World. So what happened? Mr. Green was working for the News of the World. I was basically pushed back to working with Mazza all the time. And then something really odd happened. I got a phone call out of the blue, and I was in Yellow Pages around this time. I used my middle name, Joanna Hart, Joanna C. Hart, to say ex-military. I'd been in the Territorial Army, but most of my boys that I hired for surveillance were ex-military. So I advertised myself ex-military, advertising to do work, mainly surveillance. And someone contacted me. They said they were a computer company. So they said, we've got a surveillance that no other agency can do. So I went along to Buckingham Gate and took with me a chap called Martin Nymark, who was an army chap. And we basically sat and took this job. It was a surveillance on a South African chap who was doing a film. And he was filming stuff that the government didn't like. But at that time, I didn't know it was the government. They just said, oh, we don't like it. And would you do surveillance? But three other agencies have been unable to follow this guy. We need to find out where he lives. So I thought, right, we'll take it on. And I got a deposit from them and I left their offices. They said they were a computer company. I got their a business card from them and it said CIEX Limited, CIEX Limited, and computer company. So I left the building and I went for coffee with Martin to talk it over. And he said, oh, of course there's spooks, aren't they? And I thought, oh, my God, I was all very sick of being in the business, the detective business. And everybody wants to be James Bond. Everybody is, oh, that's a spooks. This is a spooks. That's a spooks. And I just thought, oh, how boring. Here we are. And I didn't want to be rude to him. And I said, oh, really? Thinking, oh, shut up. You arse. And we did the surveillance, and basically the guy led us all around Buckingham Palace, and we were on walkie-talkies, both of us doing the surveillance. Pretty much carry on private detectives. It was messy, and Martin used to make me laugh a hell of a lot. So we were basically walking around Buckingham Palace laughing on these walkie-talkies, which is a pretty silly thing to do because it's going to get picked up by Buckingham Palace security. Anyway, this chap walked then with his briefcase across the parkland, then came out on Piccadilly. I didn't want to go through the dark, so Marty said, don't worry, I'll go. And with that, a black cab was coming up Pall Mall, so I jumped in the cab and he took me round to Piccadilly, and we just saw the guy go in one of the restaurants. So he went in one of the restaurants and he was eating. So we were going to go in there, and we decided then to save the clients, this computer company, to save the clients money. So we waited at the bus stop, and we waited there for about 2 hours, which is hard to do as surveillance because basically you have to have something called eyes on, where you have to watch. And if you don't watch the doorway, you're going to miss it. So we took turns to have eyes on, and then we would rest our eyes and we would chat. And Martin's quite a good company, so it wasn't that bad. Eventually he came out. he took a left and then went up a road. I followed him and he jumped on a bus. As he jumped on the bus, he turned around. He looked straight at me with a smile on his face. I was just about to get on the bus. I came face to face with him with his smile and I thought, oh, you've got me. What's the point? You know, he is just going to spend all night dragging me around. So I just looked at him and I swore at him and I stepped back. I thought, right, that's it. You know, I don't do surveillance in those cases. I've been known to get really nasty with people in those cases, but I just thought I'll back off. So I backed off, and he looked a pretty heavyweight guy as well. So I wasn't about to start anything with him, even though I was incredibly angry because I knew I had failed with a new client. I knew they seemed very slick, very rich, and I thought, well, they're not going to use me again. So I rang the guy running the company at the time, was a South African called Andrew. He was ex-boss. So I said, I've lost him. I'm sorry. I'm just like the other agencies. And he said, that's fine. That's fine. He said, I expected it anyway. We're never going to find out where he's living. And it was just a few days. I said, look, give the job to me for a while. I'll get my mind working on it. Basically, I used to have a thing because I've always been psychic since a kid. I've always had prophetic dreams and stuff. And what I would do when I was given a job by a newspaper, I would often not know how to do it. So I would ask myself the question. I would go to sleep and then I would wake up and I would know. So often if I was given an investigative job, I would say, let me sleep on it, which a lot of the time people didn't understand, but it was just that I had no idea how to do it. But I would wake in the morning and know. It was like a part of me would have the answer, but not a part that I could easily access. Anyway, I said, let me give me the job for a few days. And I was wondering whether this part of me could do it. And it was interesting. This part of me couldn't function for people that I didn't like. So if I had somebody I didn't like give me a job, it was like this part would say, no, I'm not going to do that for them. And I couldn't get it to, and literally I could not work for someone I didn't like, even to the point of a chap from the Mirror rang me, gosh, I can't remember his name, one time, and he had something really impossible for me to do. And I knew I didn't like him and I knew I wouldn't be able to do it. So I said, I can't do it. And he said, Joanne, we must have lunch. He said, let me buy you a really nice lunch. And he said, I didn't expect you to do that job, but let's have this lovely lunch. And I said, hang on, hold it a minute, hold it. Give me another day. And literally, I then asked this part of myself to do it, and it came up with a result. And he was really surprised. He said, I thought you couldn't do it. I said, no, I thought I couldn't do it. But it was just that niceness to me that allowed these doors to open, and this part that had this certain power could come into fruition. Although that sounds mad, I did earn a lot of money on that part of me, so I have to give it credence. And I said to Andrew of CIEX Limited, I said, give me a couple of days, because he was gorgeous. This guy, oh my God, I really enjoyed ringing him, but I hated ringing him to say, I have got a bad result, because I thought that means that I won't be speaking to this guy again. And he was gorgeous. And just his accent, that South African accent, just makes me melt. And I just thought, I can imagine myself being his little private spy and ringing him and hearing his sexy little voice. And, I could tell he was like relaxed and drinking something. And I thought, yeah, soon it's going to be you and me, there together drinking something. And when I couldn't do it, I thought, and all these dreams of me and him sort of hit the deck. And I thought, I just can't handle this. I thought, let this little magic part of me bloody work, because I just want to get him. And I said, give it to me for a few days. Anyway, I was up here at the News of the World offices meeting Greg Miskey for a drink, our usual boring drinks we had after work. And the office is empty. He was blathering away on the phone trying to work on a story. That man worked hard. And it was about it was about 10 o'clock at night. And I was bored. And all of a sudden I felt this like a thought form inside my head saying, ring, 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 ring now. And I had the phone number of the film company that this guy was working for. And I had this really strong urge, just, this like thought form, ring, ring, ring now. And I sort of replied to it, even though I knew it was myself. Why would I ring now? It's like late. There'll be nobody there. What the hell's the point in doing that? Anyway, it just came back like this nag. And in the end, I thought, oh, okay, just to get rid of it so I could have a clear mind again. So I picked it up and phoned up, and a cleaner answered. I said, well, who's that? It's really late for you to be there. It's the cleaner. What do you want? And basically I said, oh, do you know I'm looking for such and such? And God, I've got this film. I've got to get it to them tonight. And I know they're staying somewhere, and I don't know where. Oh, do you know they're staying with John? Yeah, they're living at John's place. You know John Seymour. So there, bang, got it to rights. I found out where this guy was staying, because it was very easy the next day to ring John Seymour and find out where he was living. And therefore I got the film company. I got his address, and I got this South African that was causing all the trouble. I got where he was staying, which is what they wanted. So I typed out the results. I gave them a tape of me phoning the guy and getting it on tape that it was the right guy, and there he was, and it was proven. And I thought, fantastic, that's me and CIX now sealed. I've got results on something they took 6 agencies to do, and I've done it in minutes, and I didn't even need to charge a lot of money for that. And they had spent literally thousands. So they rang me, they said, well, come into the office. So I went into the office, and this time I didn't bring Martin with me, because I thought, well, I've done it. He hasn't done it. I want to get the praise now. And I thought, I'm going to get so much praise. And I had my little pussycat face on, ready to get, oh, aren't you fantastic? Oh, how'd you do that? None of that came. That was odd. Nobody really said, well, how the hell did you do that? It just didn't happen. That didn't go down. And I found that quite odd, because I was always constantly pestered by people. How did you do that? And I wasn't about to tell them, because I had this fear that if I told them, they would somehow be able to do it. And yet in my mind, I was quite smug that this little magic part of me, it wasn't, not a lot of people had it. And so I felt smug, but I didn't want to tell them, because also a lot of the time it was quite unusual the way I would get things. And it seemed almost like very basic, like, I got it from the cleaner. It didn't sound very slick. It sounds, and I didn't want to sound messy. I wanted to sound slick. So basically I went to the offices along Buckingham Gate to get my praise. And that's why I went along. I thought, right, they are really going to be nice to me. And I sat down in this boardroom, and all of a sudden, all these very important men came filing in. There was about 10 of them squashed around this boardroom, all looking really important. And I thought, what? And praising me wasn't on the cards. Basically, they wanted to know about the news of the world. Basically, they wanted to know about the SAS and the news of the world, and what the news of the world were doing with the boys at Hereford, as they put it. I found it quite amusing. I don't know why I found it amusing. I think if you work for the News of the World long enough, you become like, the News of the World is a cult, and it's run like a cult, and there are different layers, and the reporters basically are kept as pawns, and then you climb up, and Mazza is a bishop. Mazza will never be burned, even though people gleefully think he's going to get his comeuppance. Mazza is a bishop. And then on the top, you have the rest of the chess pieces. So it's really like a cult. And I was lucky, I suppose you could say lucky, to get a glimpse of the higher levels and how it operated. So I knew all about that. And also it makes you feel very, very powerful. And it makes you feel very, very above others that are almost like civilians. And you're almost in this kind of military structure. And we did have control of the SAS, because we had lots of money to throw at them. And I found it amusing that it had gone on. So I remember laughing, and they did not find this funny. They really didn't. There was quite senior people from the British Army there. There was the chap who owned the company, and a few other people from the terrorist squad, and they were very, very senior people. And basically, they grilled me about what was going on at the News of the World, and basically, they didn't like it, and they wanted to finish. Basically, it was the state, and the state didn't like the way the News of the World was operating, and the rest of the press, not just the News of the World. Sunday Mirror and all the newspapers, basically, they had become out of control and they were spying on the state, and the state wanted control. And basically, they wanted to know how to destroy it. And I told them that I had introduced Mr. Sorry, we're taking a break now. Be back after. Hello, I'm back now with you from my little house in London and coming across the airwaves to you good people in America. And I hope you're enjoying waking up and going along to Gelson's and all those lovely little shops you've got with the lovely little delis and the great coffee and the great people, and just reminding yourselves how lucky you are to be living in America. It's an amazing place, and if I could get out there, I would. But sadly, I'm stuck in London. Haven't got the money to move out there. Haven't got the American husband to marry and become legal out there. So any offers in that direction, Christine Joanna Hart, I'm on Facebook. And I would love to live in America, but stuck in a Stepford Wife village, just on the outskirts of Kensington. And this is the worst place on earth to live. It makes the film The Stepford Wives look like a picnic. It is complete horror. The women just walk around in Bowden with parasols. The men are completely whipped by the women. They earn the money, and the women get to lay around and basically kind of browbeat the men. I guess that's not like Stepford Wives. It's in there they kind of control the women, but here the women are the same kind of cake baking mafia, but they also browbeat the men. The men are basically the workhorses, and the women are in control, and they're in control of the schools, and basically makes the school gate not much fun. It's a little bit, in a way, like an Amish community. I'm a little bit shunned because I am a single mother. I was a Fleet Street journalist. I worked for the News of the World, the Daily Mail, the Sunday Mirror, and I was a career woman. And basically it was like, oh shit, I forgot to get married. Oh shit, I forgot to have a child. So basically, you know, I had my son pretty quickly, but it was a very intense love affair with somebody who I was spying on, actually. It all got very long kiss goodnight. And so I didn't get married, but that doesn't mean I literally haven't had sex in, how many years? Since 2003, even before 2003, because my son was born December 2003. So that's quite a few years, but, you know, I'm pretty much judged by these women as somebody who's out every night just because I'm single, you know. There we are. That's the women of my little village. So you're very lucky to be living out in America. I'm here today in my little bunny rabbit, Bridget Jones' Diary, PJs, because it's so grey and wet outside that I'm huddled up inside with my cup of tea, lots of sugar, and I'm just talking to you guys about what happened at the News of the World and the state's involvement in the phone hacking. Indeed, an elite branch of the military branch of MI6. It's a part of the SAS known as the Increment, and the Increment were involved in the phone hacking. I hope you've been following the story. If not, please go back and listen from the start. But to continue on, I was now in this boardroom with these people that were introduced as senior British Army officials and senior anti-terrorist and senior God knows what. They lined the table. I was basically sitting there waiting for them all to say how fantastic I was because I'd found this guy's address, and all I wanted to know was how much access to the boy in Hereford to the New have? How long have they been using them? What do they use them for? We're very angry about this. And I sat there and I didn't take it seriously. I skit and laughed and I played a bit of a know-it-all, and they have plenty of access and we use them for absolutely everything. Why? What's your problem? And basically I still, even though a colleague had said, they were MI6, I still believe that they were a computer company just being nosy and had found out I worked for the News of the World. That was how fluffy and blonde I was back then. Basically, they grilled me. I told them absolutely everything about the News of the World as they sat there getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And then they said, do you know who we are? And I remembered what my colleague had said. And I thought, well, are they the spooks? And I said, no. And I basically kind of, raised my eyebrows and said, well, I'm not really sure. MI6, are you? Thinking, oh, God, of course they're not. And they basically admitted to me that they were MI6. Some of them were SAS, and they were very angry about what I had told them as I was skitting and laughing. And basically, they warned me that the News of the World was finished. It was only a year or so after that what happened, the News of the World was introduced to a man that Mr. Green had trained up. And that was Glenn Mulcaire, basically an innocent, basically what is known as a patsy. He was a football player, didn't know much about anything, certainly didn't know about investigations, was picked up off the street. Basically, he answered one of these little adverts that is put out, can you lie? You'd probably make a good private eye. So basically, this poor chap got this job with Mr. Green, and he trained him in certain stuff, i.e. hacking. And the News of the World was introduced to the patsy, and basically it was let go ahead. Now, there was somebody who was privy to this. I was pushed out then of the News of the World. I wasn't bothered because I was then at that point sniffing around the Real IRA, which is, I'll cover the Real IRA on Friday, on my show on Friday, and spying on the Real IRA. I will cover that on Friday. We're running out of time here to cover that now. But I was basically living in Belfast, working for the Sunday Times, a man called Liam Clark for the Sunday Times. Basically is seen as MI5 by the terrorists. But that is a story that I would cover on Friday. I didn't have any interest in what was going on. The next thing, the phone hacking imploded, and this patsy was exposed as a phone hacking private investigator. Now, Mr. Green then stepped back. What happened then, Nick Davies came along and he wanted to expose the whole thing. He knew the whole story about what had happened with me. I'd eventually filled him in on some of it, but he knew, he had found out. He has links everywhere, and he had found out all this. He knew about Mr. Green. He knew about CIX Limited. And by the way, CIX Limited is a secret code. If you look at CIEX, if you write it down on a piece of paper, the first part of it, CIE, is French for company. CIE, company. That's French for company. And then you've got an X. So basically CIEX means Company X. It's Michael Oatley's company, and he is senior MI6. He's the one who did the deals with the IRA for Margaret Thatcher. That's his company. It's what's known as a black bag company. It's now since folded. But there are other companies that I've worked for who have taken its place. There are a few. There aren't that many, but there are a few. Basically, what happened, this chap, Glenn Mulcaire, was basically chicken feed in comparison to the people who brought in the phone hacking. It was let go ahead by the high rollers at the paper. Sean Hoare, a reporter who was actually a friend of mine, knew about this. He was due to give testimony in court against Rebecca Brooks. And Mr. Green had stepped back from it. Nick Davies knew the whole score. He was going to rip it open and expose the state's involvement in the thing, the suspicions that the state had brought in the phone hacking to crash the newspaper and to remove the teeth from the press. I assumed that this was all going to be revealed. The whole thing would come out. My part, Mr. Green's part, my meeting with CIEX, the anger over the SAS. Absolutely nothing came out, not even the SAS working for the News of the World. Nothing came out at all. And when I met with Stephen Heffer, who is working for the victims against the Sunday Mirror, he said, I know this. He said, I know it goes back to the state. He said, we're finding this out now. He said, but there are so many doors. I was actually threatened at the time to keep my mouth shut, or I would end up in trouble. And I was reminded that I had a child, but I have been moved to speak out about it because the Clooney film is going ahead, and basically it's all been left out of the Clooney film, and Nick Davies has become part of the cover-up. But it's also been listed as, oh, we expose everything. We expose Glenn Mulcair. Now, there's even been a book written by James Hanning about Mulcair, as if he's, this really fascinating character that is somehow the brainchild of the phone hacking, when really he's just a patsy. Interestingly, Hanning is an ex-Eton schoolboy, and there's all been such a massive cover-up, and, the state are completely involved, and the press now do not use investigators. I spoke to the Daily Mail, who had done this so-called investigation last week, and they had it printed, Daily Mail investigates. So I rang them. I spoke to Catherine Faulkner, and she said, oh, don't do investigations outside the newspapers, because I offer my services. And you can find my website, www.anniehartintelligence.co.uk. I have to use my second name again because now I'm linked with the phone hacking. And she said, no, we don't use investigators anymore. Basically, what the press are doing now, when something isn't an investigation, it gets posted on it, it's an investigation. So nobody knows that the press does not do investigations anymore. Basically, the whole thing has been an operation by the state from start to finish. But the Hollywood movie, and Hollywood is so influential in how we think about things, the Hollywood movie is going to come out to back that line, to back, oh, here was a rogue private eye who thought about all this, and oh dear, it ruined a newspaper. The whole story, the real story, is going to be left out by George Clooney. So I put it to Clooney, and hopefully he'll receive this message, to tell the correct story, to not throw the public chicken feed with lies and half a story, not even a story, it's some kind of party line. We really do need to look at this and get back the teeth for the press. That was what kept our country great. That was what kept our politicians from stealing from the public purse. That's what kept us exposing wrongdoings. That they were scared of the press. And now, you have it's been a very, very, very clever operation from start to finish. And the terrifying thing was, and Wheating knew about this, was the murder of Sean Hoare by The Increment. He was taken down because he knew that it had been let go ahead. Nobody said, let's stop the phone hacking, because it was an operation from above to let it go ahead. Okay, some very, very powerful people. So Sean had to take a dive, and that also has been announced as not a murder, the same as the murder of Diana. What people don't look at, oh, Diana had an accident. These elite groups, okay, they have things called remote viewing. Now, just Google it, okay? Even psychic societies teach remote viewing now. It's when you focus on a subject, you can perhaps drug them beforehand, but they don't need it to help them become loose in their bodies. But you can remote view them to make them do whatever they want, or to think, if they don't have a tight hold on themselves. Now, Diana's driver would have been remote viewed to crash at that particular point. So this elite group, The Increment, they are not only military, but they are also psychic soldiers. And, you have to look at that warfare, and you have to look at what's going on, because what's going on, we're being tied up really, really tighter in a kind of a net. And nobody is exposing it. Nobody is whistleblowing on it. We're just sitting there complacently like little sheep. There's little villages like this where all the women care about is baking cakes. All the men care about is bigger houses. Nobody is looking at the bigger picture of what's going on in our society, which is more and more state corruption, more and more state control. You know, our dogs are being silenced. We don't have a press anymore. We have no fight back in this country, and nobody cares. And if you whistleblow on it, you're frowned upon. Or, oh, that's bad. Oh, are you one of those conspiracy theorist people? You know, nobody cares. And, you know, this is a really beautiful planet, and something dark and horrible has got hold of it. And the only antidote is, and I've looked into evil because I've studied it, seems like the only antidote is Jesus Christ. And the only way, if you have people trying to remote view yourself or have nightmares or any kind of thing yourself, it's a spiritual warfare. It's a spiritual thing as well as physical. And they're very adept on the spiritual plane, is to pray, is to call on Christ. And I know I'll be even more unpopular ending on a note of Jesus Christ, but, you know, if you read the Bible, Jesus Christ tells us, he says, I am the gate. And I always wondered what that meant. I am the gate. And what does that mean? Gate to what? We're not trapped in anywhere, but we are trapped in. We're trapped in. It's almost like there's a giant spider and we're wrapped up with a cobweb, and we are actually trapped in and we don't know it. It's kind of similar to that film, The Maze. We're in the little bit of green. We're like, oh, we're okay. We've got Waitrose and we've got Gelson's and we've got our food and our TV and we're free. Well, we're not free. Actually, look around at the big picture. We're not free. And Jesus Christ gave us the message, I am the gate. And what he meant was he is the gate to freedom, the gate to ascending. Basically, they've got us tied up so tightly that we can't ascend after death. We have to keep coming around and coming around. And it is a horror story of what's really happening. And it's getting darker and darker and darker and darker. And all the time, the sheep are keeping each other down by, if you come out and you think differently, oh, you must be mad. And then the person, you know, gets very fearful and says, oh, okay, you're right. Sorry, let's go back to watching Big Brother. Let's go back to focusing on what's on special offer at the supermarket and, you know, that kind of thing. And we basically police each other. You know, we keep each other down. Society keeps each other down. And Christ said, I am the gate. So it's the gate, literally the gate out of here. So I'm going to finish the show by asking everyone to, even though it might not come easy, to pray today, to have a pray, to try and talk to Jesus Christ, to try and say something, to try, even if it's just hi there, even if you just say hi there. And I know it's very hard to pray. I've got financial difficulties at the moment, and please, if you want to make a donation to keep me on air, do so. I have no idea how to, but I know Laura Lee Solomon does, so please just contact her to just pray. And a friend of mine said, you know, pray about your money problems, your situation, you've got no work, pray. Unfortunately, I've been blacklisted because of the phone hacking. Pray to Jesus. And I thought, well, I don't want to, because I thought Jesus let me down. He's left me in a hole here. You know, I've got a son. I'm a single mother. And I just imagined a figure in front of me. And I just said, well, sod you. You know, even if you just say that, it doesn't matter. You're just opening up the lines, the communication, and you've got your hand on the gate. And to have your hand on the gate is the first step towards getting your freedom, even if you don't believe that you're in a prison, even if you're quite happy with the prison, and even if you're one of the people that thinks, well, it's okay, I'm happy here, I'm happy with my TV, I'm happy with my treats, I'm happy with my family, and most of us have got love. And that's why they say people that are lonely and people that are going through a lot of problems are really, really blessed, because if you're going through problems, then you're looking for solutions, and then you look towards the gate